All right, let's dive into something crispy and delicious today. We're taking a deep dive into air fryer fried fish.
Ooh, sounds tasty.
Yeah, and we're looking at a recipe from the Fork and Fry podcast. You know how everyone's trying to get that crispy texture without all the oil and mess?
Yeah, the air fryer's been a game changer for that.
Right, and this recipe goes a step further. They actually use Parmesan cheese in the breading.
Parmesan in the breading for fish. Hmm, I'm intrigued.
Me too. But before we get to the cheese, what do we know about these Fork and Fry folks? Are they legit?
Oh yeah, they're not just some random food blog. They really go deep into the science of air frying. Like they test different techniques and ingredients, even consult with food scientists to see how different foods react in the air fryer.
So they're not messing around. Their recipe's probably more than just throw it in and hope for the best.
Exactly. They're all about understanding the how and the why, which is especially important with fish, right?
Oh, totally. Fish can be so tricky. You overcook it for a second and it's dry. Getting that crispy outside and flaky inside, well, that's a skill.
That's where the Parmesan comes in, I bet.
Okay, before we go full cheese, let's back up.
Huh.
The recipe calls for any mild white fish. But any recommendations? Is cod the go-to or what?
Cod's definitely popular for frying, but it can dry out in the air fryer sometimes. It's a little lean.
Hmm.
Tilapia has a bit more fat, so it stays moister. Haddock's somewhere in between. It really depends on what you like and how your air fryer cooks.
So you gotta know your equipment too. It's not just blindly following a recipe.
Exactly. You're thinking like a chef already. Now, for the breading, they've got the classic 3 steps: flour, egg wash, then the panko parmesan. Anything special about their approach?
Yeah, is it just a standard breading or did they get fancy?
The steps are pretty standard, but they're really big on seasoning each layer. They say it adds layers of flavor, especially since fish is pretty mild on its own. Oh, and they say to use finely grated Parmesan,
Why finely grated?
so it mixes better and melts more evenly, which gets you that crispy texture we were talking about.
Okay, I'm starting to see how they think. So we've got our fish, seasoned flour, egg wash, panko parmesan. What's next? Time to fire up the air fryer.
Almost. Preheat to 400 degrees, that's pretty standard for fish. But here's a fork and fry special use parchment paper in the air fryer basket.
Parchment paper. Really? What for?
2 reasons. 1, it keeps the fish from sticking to the basket so it looks nice when you serve it.
Makes sense.
But the big reason, it helps the airflow better. The holes in the basket can make the air circulate unevenly, so some parts cook faster. Parchment paper evens things out.
Smart. I've definitely had some unevenly cooked air fryer disasters, so parchment paper is going on my shopping list. All right, preheated air fryer, parchment paper ready, time to bread the fish.
Hold on, before you get messy, Fork and Fry has one more crucial tip. Pat those fish fillets dry with paper towels.
Why bother with that?
Any extra moisture on the fish will thin out the flour and make the breading clumpy. Drying it makes the flour stick better, which means a nice smooth base for the egg wash and the panko parmesan.
They're really into the details, huh?
They are. They're all about those little things that make a big difference.
So we pat the fish dry, then it's flour, egg wash, and finally the panko parmesan glory. Then straight into the air fryer.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Gently press the breadcrumb mixture onto the fish so it really sticks and gets a nice even coating. And don't overcrowd the basket. Remember, airflow is key.
Got it. Beautifully breaded fish, carefully arranged, not overcrowded. How long do we cook these babies?
Fork and Fry recommends 10 to 12 minutes at 400 degrees, flipping halfway through. Make sure both sides are golden brown and use a meat thermometer. Fish needs to be 145 degrees inside to be safe.
Makes sense, especially since air fryers can vary. So we've got our perfectly cooked, golden brown, Parmesan-crusted fish. What's next? We can't stop there.
Of course not. What's fried fish without its trusty sidekick?
You're talking about tartar sauce, and I bet Fork and Fry has a recipe for that too.
They sure do. But before we dive into that tangy goodness, let's just take a moment to appreciate how much thought Fork and Fry puts into their recipes.
Yeah, they've really done their homework. It's not just a list of ingredients. It's like they're right there with you, explaining every step.
Exactly. Now, are you ready for some homemade tartar sauce?
Bring on the tang.
All right, let's break down this tartar sauce. Fork and Fry keeps it pretty simple, but they don't skimp on flavor. They start with good mayonnaise. You know, the real deal, not that watery stuff.
Yeah, gotta have a good base. Mayo makes everything creamy. What else do they add?
Next up, the tang. They use dill pickle relish, and I think that's important, not just any relish, but dill.
Dill, huh? I like that. It's got that fresh herby flavor.
Right, it cuts through the richness of the mayo and the fried fish.
So we got creamy, we got tangy. What else is in this flavor party?
Well, you need a little brightness to balance things out, so a squeeze of lemon juice.
Oh, yeah. Lemon juice is like magic. Brightens up any dish, any other seasonings.
They add a little Dijon mustard.
Dijon, interesting.
Yeah. It's not just for heat. Dijon adds a little complexity, a bit of earthiness that goes really well with everything else.
Okay, now I'm really curious to try this. So we've got mayo, dill pickle relish, lemon juice, and Dijon. Is that the whole shebang?
That's it.
Uh-huh.
Fork and Fry really believes in letting the ingredients do the talking, you know. But they do say you can adjust the amounts to your liking, like more relish if you want it super tangy,
Mm,
or a bit more lemon juice for extra tizing.
I like that. It's your tartar sauce. Make it how you want it. So we've got our fish, our awesome tartar sauce. What are we serving alongside this
You
feast?
could go classic with fries, a little fish and chips action,
Yeah.
but I think this dish is light enough that you could do a salad or some roasted veggies.
Ooh, roasted veggies sound good. Maybe some asparagus and broccoli roasted in the air fryer while the fish is cooking.
Now you're talking. One appliance, a whole meal. Speaking of which, isn't there a risk of flavors getting mixed up when you cook multiple things in the air fryer?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I've had some interesting results when I've tried that before.
Yeah, me too. But Fork and Fry has got you covered. They say to use separate trays or baskets if you're worried about that.
That makes sense.
That way everything cooks at its own pace. And they recommend parchment paper liners too to help keep flavors separate.
So many good tips. It's like they thought of everything. All right, we've got the fish, the tartar sauce, side dish ideas, ready to wrap up this deep dive.
Almost. But there's one more thing Fork and Fry mentioned that really got me thinking.
Okay, I'm all ears. What is it?
They said this Parmesan breading trick isn't just for fish. Think about it. Chicken, pork chops, even tofu with that crispy Parmesan crust.
Whoa, that's blowing my mind. It's like this recipe is just the beginning.
Right. It's all about understanding the technique, and
Yeah.
you can go wild and try it on all sorts of things.
I'm already planning my next air fryer adventure. But before I get carried away, let's sum up what we learned from Fork and Fry about their awesome air fryer fried fish.
Sounds good to me. Let's hit the highlights.
Okay, so we've gone deep on this air fryer fried fish from Fork and Fry, and I'm ready to fire up my air fryer right now.
Me too. They've given us so much to think about.
Right. Like you think you know how to air fry, but there's always something new to learn.
I was really impressed with how much attention they paid to the little things,
Yeah.
like using dill pickle relish, not just any relish.
Yeah. Or that tip about patting the fish dry. Who knew that was so important?
It's all about setting yourself up for success, right?
Yeah.
No soggy breading allowed.
And then there's the Parmesan in the breading. That's next level.
It really is. It's like cheese and breadcrumbs. Who would have thought?
They really know their stuff. And the best part, it's not just for fish.
That's what blew my mind, too. They even mentioned trying it with chicken and pork chops.
And tofu. Imagine crispy Parmesan-crusted tofu.
This recipe is like a gateway to a whole new world of crispy deliciousness.
I'm already thinking about all the things I can try. So what's the big takeaway for our listeners today? What should they remember?
I think it's that even the simplest recipes can be full of surprises.
Yeah, it's those little tweaks and techniques that can really elevate your cooking. And Fork and Fry is a great resource for that. Don't forget to check out their podcast if you want more air fryer inspiration.
It's awesome to see people so passionate about what they do.
So there you have it, folks. Next time you're craving a crispy, flavorful, and healthy meal, remember this air fryer fried fish with its secret Parmesan weapon.
Is proof that anyone can create amazing food at home.
Happy cooking, everyone!